So I moved to New Orleans from Boston in 2008, and when I did, I was working freelance on a magazine article about missile defense. And if I could borrow a quote from Douglas Adams, you'll understand that I love deadlines. I especially love the whooshing sound that they make when they go flying by. So you'll understand that soon enough, I found myself out of cash and had nothing structuring my days, and that article still wasn't coming along. And as it happened, the apartment that I had taken was just down the block from a Starbucks. It was about a 45-second walk, which was perfect. It was about all I could handle at 5:30 in the morning. So I took a job at the Starbucks, and I loved working at that Starbucks. I loved getting to know the regulars. And soon enough, I came to recognize them, and they came to recognize me. And one of them, a woman, would come in. She had this very all-business bobbed hair, and she always wore this dark suit. And she always had two little kids with her, and one of them, the boy, would get chocolate organic milk, and one of them, the girl, would get vanilla organic milk, and she'd always have them in her hands. And when she came to the register to pay, she'd say to me, "After the storm, everyone else came back. You didn't. You weren't even flooded, but you didn't come back." Now, I was new to the store. I was new to the city. When I watched Hurricane Katrina happen on the big screen television in my parents' house in New Jersey. And so there was nothing I could say, except I said to her, "I'm sorry." I said, "Do you want to call the company? Maybe you could talk to a manager." And each time she would just look at me and shake her head, like, what good would that do? And she'd take her little kids in her hands, one in each hand, and she'd lead them out into the street that used to be flooded and no longer was. And a few days later, she'd come back in, and we'd have the exchange all over again. She'd say, "You didn't come back." And I'd say, "I'm sorry." And after a few weeks of this, I began to understand that what it was like was the chorus, the part to a song that structures that song, the refrain, the part that everyone knows the words to and can sing along with. It was like the roofing and contracting signs that were tacked all over the city. They were stuck to every dead tree that had lost its branches in the storm, and they were stuck to the telephone poles that said, "Roofing, we can help you rebuild. Contractor, call, we can help you rebuild." Now, it had been 3 years. If you had the money to hire a roofer and you needed one, odds were you'd already hired them. But still, it was too early to take the signs down. Now, one day, this guy came into the store. There was a long line, and maybe he'd been in before, and maybe he hadn't. And all right, his khakis, they were a little rumpled, and his hair was really frizzed out, but it's New Orleans in the summer, whose isn't? I was working the register, and the two guys before him in line, they ordered coffee. And so when the man ordered just a blueberry muffin, I said to him, "Would you like some coffee?" And he lost it. He just lost it. He said, "Hell no, I do not want coffee. I will not drink anything made with your water. Look out there." And he pointed to the intersection the shop's on. There's this floor-to-ceiling, beautiful window. It's right in this intersection. He pointed out there. And there's a gas station, there's a little Asian fusion restaurant, and there's this boutique that sells only women's party dresses, really poofy, bright dresses. And I remember that the dress in the window that day was lavender. He said, "There were dead bodies in the street out there. They were floating in the water for days, and I do not want coffee. I will not drink anything made with your water." Now, like I said, I live down the block from the Starbucks, just down the street. So when my shift ended that day, I got in my car and I drove out to the Walmart on Chapatula Street to buy myself a water filter. And I was going to buy a Brita, because a Brita is what I use here in Boston. But, there are no dead bodies in the water in Boston, at least none that I know about. And I figured that in something like this, all that can matter is what you know to worry about. So I splurged on this pitcher that had a solid carbon filter and this special tube and a washer that I had to swap out. And every time I wanted to get a glass of filtered water, I had to connect this tube. And for 2 weeks, I did that. But, it was a pain in the ass to connect that tube every time. And so after 2 weeks, I stopped. And I started to just drink the water straight. But every time I filled my glass, and every time I swallowed the water, I thought about that guy, and I thought about the woman in line right after him. She ordered coffee. Thanks.